knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
Continuing with our investigation of phylum Chordata, we reach the final class of this series. Let's take another look at the chordate cladogram. Note that birds are listed here, within the archosaurs. In order to better study them, we'll start by exploring their evolutionary history, defining characteristics, flight, migration, social behavior, and conservation. To introduce the birds, we don't have to go as far back in evolutionary time as we did for the mammals and reptiles, when we looked at their divergence in the Permian. Instead, we only need to go back to the Mesozoic, when the birds began to diverge from the other reptiles. In this cladogram, all animals listed are archosaurs, or members of the clade Archosauromorpha. Dinosauria, the dinosaurs, includes all ornithischians, sauropods, and giant terrestrial forms like the tyrannosaurs, along with the only extant dinosaurs, the birds. Note that this excludes the ancient flying pterosaurs, along with the giant marine reptiles like the ichthyosaurs and mosasaurs. So to summarize, birds are extant avian dinosaurs, more closely related to velociraptors than pterodactyls, but let's take a bit of a closer look here. Once, birds were considered to be any animal, extinct or extant, with feathers, but more recent analyses have blurred that line, as more and more fossil forms of theropods have been discovered to have feathers. Though their morphological similarities to some of the dinosaurs was apparent for many years, it was not until the discovery of Archaeopteryx in 1861 that researchers famously claimed to have discovered a transitional form. For over 100 years, Archaeopteryx was one of the most famous transitional fossils found, treated as a link between extinct dinosaurs and the extant birds. It has both traditional reptilian characteristics, like teeth, clawed fingers, a long tail, as well as wings with feathers. However, though its significance cannot be overstated, it is no longer considered a direct ancestor of the modern birds. It turns out that there are a great deal more bird-like dinosaurs than we once imagined, such as Aurornis, Zhoutingia, and Anchiornis. We now have an extraordinary diversity of extinct forms that blur the line between avian and non-avian dinosaur, although many aspects of bird evolution are still being debated. For example, exactly how did flight evolve? Were the ancestors of modern birds arboreal gliders, climbers, ground-dwelling hunters, or perhaps they just used their tiny wings to stir up prey? We do know that feathers evolved long before flight, since so many theropods appear to have them, and we know that modern birds are theropod dinosaurs who greatly expanded in diversity around 70 to 65 million years ago. All birds are, like the mammals and non-avian reptiles, bilaterally symmetrical, amniotic tetrapods that lack larval stages. However, they are easily distinguished from reptiles and mammals due to their epidermal covering of feathers and leg scales, along with their sweat glands, which other reptiles lack, and oil gland at the base of their tail. Also, unlike the reptiles, but like the mammals, birds are endothermic, and therefore regulate their body temperature internally. Morphologically, they are distinct in that they possess an elongated S-like neck, forelimbs modified as wings which provide powered flight in many species, skulls with one occipital condyle, like all reptiles, but unlike all mammals, which instead have two occipital condyles, bones with air cavities, short tails with caudal vertebrae reduced to a pygostyle, a sternum that is usually large and keeled, a lack of teeth with jaws covered in a keratinized sheath that forms a beak, digestive systems with a gizzard, a characteristic they share with the crocodilians, along with a four-chambered heart, well-developed brains, especially their optic lobes and cerebellum, with 12 pairs of cranial nerves, large eyes, internal fertilization, separate sexes which are sometimes extremely sexually dimorphic in terms of coloration, especially in many passerines, young that hatch from calcareous shells and are often provided with extensive parental care, and highly modified lungs and additional air sacs along their visceral organs and skeleton. Though some modern birds have secondarily lost the ability to fly, such as the flightless cormorant and the large flightless paleognathines, the ancestors of all birds and nearly all modern birds are capable of powered flight that involves a remarkable interplay of anatomy, mechanics, and aerodynamics. When a bird takes flight, it goes through two main phases, the upstroke and downstroke. During the upstroke, the supracoracoideus muscle contracts, raising the wing and folding it to minimize drag. In the downstroke, the powerful pectoralis muscle propels the bird upwards as the wing extends, creating lift through Bernoulli's principle, where faster air above the wing creates lower pressure, lifting the bird due in part to the wing's airfoil shape, that is covered in primary feathers and secondary feathers. Speaking of wings, there are four main types of bird wings. The elliptical wings found on many small to medium-sized birds, such as the sparrows, blackbirds, grouse, crows, and thrush. The high-speed wings, characteristic of birds that feed in flight or migrate long distances, such as falcons and swifts, ducks, tern, and sandpipers. The active soaring wings of the oceanic soaring birds, such as the albatross, gannet, and gulls. And the passive soaring wings that provide easy life for large predators, such as the eagles, hawks, and storks. Though not all birds migrate, many species have well-established routes that trend from north to south and often take advantage of global differences in seasonal temperatures in order to optimize food sources and breeding habitat. These migrations are typically associated with reproductive cycles and seasonal changes. Though many species appear to chiefly navigate by using topographical landmarks, and many use sun azimuth orientation, essentially using the sun as a compass, experiments have demonstrated that birds also use the stars for navigation and possess an extremely acute sense of time. Other experiments have demonstrated that birds are sensitive to magnetic fields and may navigate using the Earth's magnetic field lines. However, navigation during migration is but one remarkable avian behavior. Another is the fact that birds often migrate in massive groups, called flocks, which many shorebirds remain in for most of the year, though many of the perching birds are often more solitary, with notable exceptions such as the European starling that forms massive flocks year-round. Another is the fact that many species, such as the white pelicans, participate in cooperative foraging behaviors, and many seabirds often gather in enormous colonies, such as the gannets and emperor penguins, to nest and rear young. Such togetherness is common in the birds and provides a great deal of practical benefits, such as mutual protection from potential predators, greater ease in finding mates, mass huddling for warmth in many penguin species, and cohesion during long migrations. However, bird behaviors don't all involve such cooperation. Many birds are famous for their territoriality and aggression towards members of the same species, especially during mating season, when males of many species begin elaborate courtship rituals in order to attract a mate. These rituals are extraordinarily complex in some species, such as the birds of paradise, black-footed albatross, blue-footed boobies, red-capped manakin, grebes, and many others. Sometimes they require the construction of elaborate structures, such as in the bowerbird, and often they involve a ritual of some kind that may primarily be performed by the male or involve the interaction of both parties. However, since most male birds lack a penis, the actual act of copulation often takes mere seconds, as it simply involves bringing the cloacal surfaces of the male and female into contact in a cloacal kiss, where sperm is transferred from male to female, after which the female lays eggs, often into a pre-constructed nest, some of which may be quite elaborate, like the hanging nests of the orioles, such as the oropendulas, or the lichen-covered mud nests of the hummingbirds, the chimney-shaped mud nests of cliff swallows, the floating nests of red-necked grebes, and many others. Though some females, such as the nest parasites like the brown-headed cowbirds and European cuckoos, lay their eggs into the nests of other birds and provide no parental care of their own. Most chicks are raised by both of their monogamous parents, meaning they have only one mate for the season and in many cases for life. But that doesn't actually mean that the birds who raise the chicks are the genetic parents. Though many species do pair bond for life, like many swans, it turns out that they often mate with other birds, such that about 30% of the young in any given nest are not the genetic offspring of both parents. However, the bonded pair do return to the same monogamous mate in the end to raise the offspring even if they aren't genetically their own. Less common is the practice of polygamy, where an individual has more than one pair-bonded mate per season, though the formation of leks, collective display grounds such as those of the greater sage grouse, exists in polygynous species where a single male mates with many females, and polyandry, where a female mates with many males, often leaving each male to raise a few eggs on his own, which is practiced by some shorebird species such as the spotted sandpiper. Regardless, most young are raised by both parents, and often grouped as precocial, such as those of the quail and ducks, that are covered in down when hatched and can run or swim, or altricial, which are naked and unable to walk or even see at birth, and thus require more time in the nest and the constant care of both parents. As such, many bird species are extremely social and partake in numerous activities to strengthen bonding between bonded pairs, and often even unrelated individuals. In addition, some social species, such as many parrots and corvids, pass on knowledge across generations, which is arguably considered a form of culture. However, in spite of their numerous adaptations, many bird species are in decline worldwide, with well over 1,500 listed as threatened or endangered. Some, such as the passenger pigeons, which were once so numerous that their numbers blackened the skies, were famously hunted to extinction. However, interestingly enough, in the US and Canada at least, modern hunters have turned into some of the greatest conservationists for game birds, and some of the first to preserve massive swaths of land to allow the birds to nest. Today, in the US and Canada, though hunters kill millions of birds annually, no endangered or threatened species are hunted, and populations of waterfowl and game birds are closely monitored by governmental programs. Today, it is not the populations of waterfowl that are endangered. It is numerous species of smaller migratory birds that depend on ever-decreasing forested land. Though some species can deal with such loss of habitat, such as the robins, house sparrows, and starlings, many others are in decline and in need of additional conservation efforts. And that summarizes the basics of the birds, but we've still got a lot to cover here. Let's move forward and check out the body systems of the birds next. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always, feel free to email me, ProfessorDaveExplains@gmail.com.